Hello and welcome to Tech for Non-Techies, the only podcast that demystifies the fast-growing technology sector. I'm your host, Sophia Matveeva, Chicago-based MBA and tech entrepreneur. My aim here is to give you the skills, knowledge and confidence to find opportunities in the tech sector, whether that's through founding a company, getting a dream job, or bringing a fresh perspective to your work.
Hello, smart people. How are you today? I am feeling pretty darn happy, and that's partly down to one of you, so thank you. A listener called Neil Hughes left me this review on the podcast. Love how Sophia demystifies tech and uses this podcast to build a bridge between the tech industry and everyone else, all in a language that everyone can understand. Awesome podcast. And then Neil left a 5-star review. So thank you so much, Neil. You are wonderful. I want to print out your review and hug it while I sleep. If you're not Neil, I would love it if you also left a rating and a review. As you can see, it makes me deliriously happy and also really helps spread the message and spread this knowledge to other smart people like you. Another reason for me feeling rather giddy is that I've just returned from Saint-Tropez, which was amazing. Saint-Tropez is so glamorous and I love glamour. And even though the nightlife scene is closed, it is still a very glamorous, ostentatious, luxurious place. I was staying there with a friend whose aunt also lives in Saint-Tropez, and this aunt is an artist. And we spent one fabulous evening in this aunt's garden, surrounded by jasmine and drinking rosé and talking about life and love, all in French. And I was really proud of my French skills, which seem to improve mysteriously with wine, or at least I think they do. So I'm just going to keep that thought. I felt like I was in some kind of 1960s movie and that Remy Schneider was about to emerge in a beautiful bikini out of the pool. Anyway, it was amazing. And I think spending time with artists is always inspiring and eye-opening. And that's what we're going to do today. Today, you're going to hear from another kind of artist, Jenny Griffiths. Jenny is a very talented computer scientist, inventor, and mathematician. I think an artist is somebody who sees a shape or an idea where others don't. Whether that is in marble or in bronze or in paint or in numbers or in pixels. And then that artist makes that vision come to life. And that's what Jenny did. And that's what she keeps on doing. Jenny spoke to our members a few months ago, and you'll hear one of those members ask a couple of really smart questions. So if you join as a member, you'll also be able to ask our speakers your questions, get some individual feedback on whatever you're working on, and also build your network with some pretty awesome people. So enjoy this episode. I think this one is really, truly special.
Jenny, I wanted to read out what Wikipedia has to say.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Jenny Griffiths is the founder and CEO of SnapVision. She's a software engineer turned entrepreneur. She has been featured on Europe's and world's top 50 women in tech by Forbes list. She was appointed MBE for services to innovation, and she was awarded the Royal Academy of Engineering Silver Medal for contributions to UK engineering. She has also been selected by Drapers. And Drapers, that's the opposite of engineering. That's basically a fashion industry publication. In the 30 under 30, so before the junket, I'm assuming, and in the Forbes European list in the consumer technology category. So basically, Jenny, you know what you're doing when it comes to technology and entrepreneurship and fashion, which is so rare. And that's why I'm so excited to speak to you. So let's go back to the beginning. You and I both went to the University of Bristol. You studied computer science and I was studying political science. And after, when you were studying computer science, when you decided to go and get a job in a big company. So can you tell us kind of what you were doing literally straight from university and how that morphed into something completely different.
Yeah, definitely. No, happy to. And I'll go back a little bit further, maybe. So I chose computer science as a career path because I really wanted to be an animator. So it's one of those things where I watched a Pixar film when I was really young, and I just thought, oh my God, this is incredible. So when I was picking computer science degrees, I was kind of looking at it in a bit of a strange way. And I wanted a really kind of creative computer science degree rather than one where you could, like, I went and did all the open days at Oxbridge and Imperial and all of them, and they were incredible courses, but it was very kind of mathematical and very kind of data driven, I guess. When I went to Bristol, it was all around kind of animation, computer game design, like just as awesome an engineering course, but a lot more creative. So that's why I picked computer science as a degree. I just thought, right, I'm going to work for Pixar. It's going to be awesome. Life plan done.
I'm so proud of, being a Bristol alumna that, we do things differently.
Yeah, it's true. It's one of those universities that people think is quite stale and kind of up itself in a way. But like, if you look at, especially the computer science course, it was just insane. It was very, very cool at the time. So that's what kind of drew me into technology. It was that kind of passion to be the techie in a creative industry, if that makes sense, and not just be the kind of the nerd that you think of with computer science. And then when I was at university, I was kind of coding away and getting really into it. And we had to do a compulsory module called, I think it was Signals, Patterns and Systems, or something that sounded really dry. And we were all forced into it. But it turned out to be computer vision and image processing. And to me, it was just a light bulb moment of, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know this was a thing. This was in kind of 2006, 2007. So I was really early into it. And I just realized that I had the ability to teach computers to see in the way that humans see. So that was like a proper light bulb moment. So yeah, that was why I kind of came up with the business idea. And then after graduating, I had kind of 3 career options. I had, I could do a PhD because I got a nice PhD offer. I had a job offer from a large corporate, and I had my business. And it was 2000.
Sorry to interrupt. And your business was the beginning of what became SnapVision. So, okay.
Exactly, yeah. So I prototyped all the technology at university for SnapVision. I won a load of business awards, which was very cool. And I won the university's new enterprise competition, which literally as an undergraduate gave me £15,000. And it was just like, okay, this is a lot of money. So it really kind of messed with me in a good way. But it was 2009. Huge financial crisis. I had a job offer and I was kind of going, am I the entrepreneur that will turn down a good job in a recession? And I kind of know I've got that pot of money to live off, or do I take the full-time job and then have it as kind of a side hustle and see how far I can get it? So very good self-control. I put the £15,000 in a savings account, locked myself away from it. I was like, right, I'm going to keep that for the future if I do this. And then I worked as a project manager at a large engineering company. So my day job was managing kind of anywhere between kind of 20 to 50 engineers in a sector far away from fashion. I was in defense doing like secure communications and random stuff like that. It was really, really good fun. And it taught me a lot actually of skills that I wasn't expecting to be useful, I guess, in running my company. But with hindsight, it was really dumb because it was like how to manage people, how to manage budget, quality, time, all of those things you have to think about. So yeah, that was how it all started. And then I'm an honest person, and I realized about 2 years into my job, I'd been running SnapVision as the kind of side hustle. And I realized when I was at work, my brain was on my other job. And it kind of reached that point where my hobby was more interesting than what I was doing in the day. And I thought it's not fair to your employer to kind of hang around and take the salary when you're not fully engaged. So that's when I kind of took the leap of faith, unlocked that savings account and kind of gave myself that pot of money to make it work. And I promised myself that if I hadn't broken even or raised investment by the time that money was gone, then I'd given it a fair shot and I'd go back and take my job up again. But yeah, I didn't need to, which was lovely.
That's, I think, a really good example. I mean, it's a good example of many things, but I think especially just having a set amount of money, which by definition gives you a set amount of time. It's not indefinite. And you know that from the beginning. And essentially you're like, all right, I am willing to risk this.
Yeah.
And then if I get more, then I'm willing to risk the next bit that I get. But if it doesn't work out after this 15 grand, then okay, cut my losses.
Yeah.
I think that it's so important, if you're investing in a product or you're investing in a company, or frankly, if you're investing in a relationship.
Yeah, it's true, actually.
To kind of think, you know what,
Yeah.
like, I'm willing to give this a go, but I'm not going to be slugging this along for the, and unless some good stuff happens.
Yeah, it's true. It's always my number one bit of advice actually for entrepreneurs, because I think like you've got to be in love with your product, right, and your idea, and there's a reason that you leave that security and you want to kind of go out on a limb, and that's what makes you investable, what makes you kind of more likely to succeed. But that is also the antithesis of logic of, hang on, this is a passion project, you're never going to make money from it, or this is someone else is going to be better at doing this, and why. So I think kind of having that line, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's like a commercial proof point you want to hit, and kind of keeping yourself honest to it is pretty important, especially at the beginning.
So I also wonder if this is the first fashion company that has come out of a defense company. I'm just curious. I don't know.
It was interesting. And actually, when I was kind of applying for jobs, I had it in the back of my mind. I was like, I think I might want to do Snap Vision properly. And I was trying to think of what companies can I work for where they won't kind of have any IP ownership, or there won't be any kind of overlap in my day job and my side hustle. Because I think that's another thing that it's very easy to fall into a trap of. If you work for a company that's in the space, then it just makes everything really awkward. Whereas if you're a project manager at a defense company versus a software engineer in a fashion tech company, there's a nice clear line there. So that definitely helps.
So when you were first creating Snap, it wasn't called Snap Vision at the time, but from what I understand, you had a consumer focus. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So where we started, we've always been Snap, but we were Snap Fashion back at the beginning. So it was basically upload a photo of something that you like and we'll find something similar. And that stemmed from when I was at university. It was also called Snap Fashion, believe it or not. I've got the old deck and it's hilariously badly designed. But it was all around kind of shopping on a student budget and being that person who loved reading Vogue magazine, reading in style, kind of flicking through and then trying to kind of manually find a look that I could afford on like ASOS or Topshop or whatever. So that's kind of where the idea came from. It was one of those ideas where my flatmates obviously were asking what I was doing, and I told them and they were like, oh, that's amazing, I'd love to use it. And then they told their friends. So I kind of left university with a kind of small test group of people who would want to use it. And that's something else actually that I think is really important when you're building a tech product, is making sure that you're building it for real consumers rather than for this kind of mental model of how you think people shop in your head, because that's never true. So yeah, that's where we started out. So we formally launched in 2012. The day after we launched, we won the Cisco British Innovation Awards, which was absolutely awesome. It was a £200,000 prize.
That's a good day.
So yeah, so that happened with Cisco, and that made quite a lot of noise around the company. So we're the first company in the world to do cross-platform visual search for fashion, which I've just realized I haven't explained my company. It's now kind of, we can take any image, whether it's user-generated content on social media, whether it's a model shot on a retailer, and we can basically read that image for information. So when you're thinking about fashion, it's kind of, does this dress have a V-neck? What kind of sleeves does it have? What shape is it? And then from that information, we're able to recommend similar items. So that was what was baked into this consumer product. And sorry, I realize I'm flying around the place a bit.
I wanted to say that I have tried your consumer product, and I remember trying it ages ago, years ago. One of my early advisors showed it to me because she just played with it. And we literally were supposed to have a business meeting, but we just kept on photographing things at the table and matching things. So literally to the audience, play around with this app just because it's fun. So you can download this app, and Jenny, tell me if I'm telling it wrong, but essentially take a photo of literally a glass, or like it's designed for clothes, but we were just doing it with everything. So I don't know, take a photo of this necklace, and then essentially the algorithm would match it to other images in fashion. So I remember we took some photos, I think, of a tablecloth that we had where we were, and then we ended up getting all of these dresses that were matched to it. And we basically ended up sitting there completely not doing what we were supposed to be doing. But it was fun, and it definitely does solve the problem of, I kind of know I want this thing, but I'm not going to pay the Gucci price.
Exactly, yeah. And it's quite funny you gave that story, actually, because we launched originally with this kind of exact image match, kind of the Shazam for fashion thing, and I hate that line, but that was kind of how we launched it. And it was very much, you can take a photo of a dress and we will find you similar dresses. So it was all automated all the way through. And then on the side, we launched another product called Snap Color Pop. And I'm not sure if you found this one, because this is super early days, but it was take a photo of the color you like and we find everything in that shade. And exactly the same technology was powering it under the hood. But the reviews on Colourpop were so much higher than Snap Fashion, because one thing that we hadn't appreciated when we designed, and this is what I mean by making sure you're speaking to real users, is that shape matching is incredibly technically difficult to do. Like, it's holy grail of computer vision stuff, but it's one of those things that people have to kind of squint at a bit when they get their results. They're like, oh yeah, it is similar. Like, I see it's got the same neckline and it's got the same hemline. Color is like instant gratification to the eyes. It's like you take a photo of a tablecloth, everything comes back in your shade, and you're like, oh, wow, that's awesome. That works really well. And it gets engagement. So we did a few product redesigns at the beginning around, right, what are the things that are kind of sparking people to hold on to this product, to kind of all that product stickiness kind of analysis you do. And it turned out that the kind of slightly dumber feature of color and texture won hands down over the shape results, which to this day, it makes my inner nerd very sad. But it's a good example of where being kind of a non-techie combined with a techie is actually really, really powerful.
That is the one that I tried, the dumb one, and I loved it.
The real one is now the dumb one, you'll be pleased to know. So what we've done, you know what, I can hold it up to the screen, is when you get your color matches, you can then get your shape matches as well. So like now if you come across this from a color, you've then got your color and texture in line and your shape matches in line. So that's the kind of way of showcasing the tech, but the entry point for us now is always color, which is kind of weird considering where we came from.
So I'm wondering about the consumer thing, because I think a lot of people start with an idea for a consumer, because we are all consumers, right?
Yeah.
And then a lot of companies end up either pivoting to B2B or at least adding B2B. And that's what you've done, because you've got your consumer products and you've got the B2B product as well. So what's the B2B offering?
Yeah, so I'd say actually we're purely a B2B company. We've got our B2C app out there for people to use, but we don't push it at all. It's basically a very cool test bed. And we've got a kind of core user base of very loyal people, but we've never tried to grow it. And the reason for that is, so probably a few months after launching the consumer-facing app, I got an email from a company called Singtel in Singapore, and they were basically going, "This is awesome. Can we talk to you?" And I genuinely thought it was junk mail, because I hadn't even considered licensing it. So I ignored them. I think it was 3 or 4 times, which is terrible now I look back on it. But they were nicely persistent, and I took the meeting. And it was fantastic. It was basically like, we've been looking for this kind of technology. We'd love to trial it. We'd love to do something with you guys. And naturally, I kind of found that I had a bit of a B2B pipeline. And this was definitely a benefit of being the first in the world to do it, because these companies who kind of keep their eye on the cutting edge side of tech were coming to us, and we were the only people in this space. So we ended up working with Singtel, and we did a project with Westfield around making physical shopping malls kind of shoppable in the digital world. So you could take a photo of something and then go in with the shopping list of, these are the shops I need to look in. We then started working with Time Inc. on publications. So if Meghan Markle's seen wearing this dress, where can you get the look for less? So we kind of found that, well, I found it was a very weird journey for me. If I kind of started off with this vision to create a consumer-facing app, and then actually realized I was kind of a AI consultancy hybrid kind of computer vision company, I guess, because the market in 2012 was at no state to be able to kind of get a SaaS sales team and sell in anger, because my whole job was around user education. It was kind of, right, what is AI? What is visual search? What can it do for you? It was very kind of consultative as a sales process. So we found that we were doing kind of high profile, very, very cool, cutting edge visual search projects. And that was informing the direction that the product was evolving in. And then a couple of years ago, I felt that switch and that pull in the market where the conversations moved from what is visual search and what it can do to me to why are you different to Google? Why are you different to insert competitor name here kind of thing? And that's where I kind of took a step back and went, right, we've grown well and we've grown a great business from doing these kind of consultative sales approaches. But now it's that kind of second phase in my founder journey of how do we double down on sales? How do we look at scaling this properly? What are the partnerships we need to get? So I've had to learn a lot on that journey, I guess, between kind of follow your nose, but also kind of follow that market pull. And some emails and some contracts are hard to ignore, I guess.
And I want to point out that essentially you co-created your product with your users. And that's what we always talk about here, is that whatever you're making, whether it's a consumer app or whether it's a B2B product, essentially you are co-creating it with the people who are using it. So you release something in a simple-ish version, then people use it, and if they're B2B customers, they tell you, what they would like to change. If it's consumers, usually they don't tell you. You have to bribe them, but or you should be also analyzing how the thing works. And so it's interesting that actually you are co-creating with your users right from the start. But the consumer app exists, but you're not doing consumer pushing. So it's more, would you say it's like a sales tool for the B2B process that people can kind of check it out and see that it works? Yeah,
kind of. I mean, there's a lot of vaporware in this space. So it is really nice just to say, like, look, download it, use it in anger, see if you like it, see if you don't. So it's definitely a bit of a sales tool, but also it's a really, really good test bed for new technology. So if we, for instance, roll out upgrades to the shape algorithms or to the color algorithms or whatever bit of the system we decide to upgrade, we roll it out there, check everything's okay, and then we take it to customers. So it kind of, it's a bit like having a staging environment that's pretty extreme. And it's worth saying as well, like, it might be a really good product to put some weight behind in the future. So it's kind of, it needs doing as a product. I really want a partner for it, actually. So that's, if anyone's listening who wants a consumer-facing app, there's definitely an opportunity here. But we found that it was all about cost of customer acquisition and marketing, and that's not my background, right? So it's kind of know your strengths, and B2B tech ended up where we decided to grow. But I mean, as I always say here, Facebook marketing cost is incredibly expensive, and for a consumer app in the kind of e-commerce or fashion tech space, it's about $4 per download, basically. Yeah. And you have to really, I mean, if it's $4 to just get somebody to download your product, you have to monetize the hell out of them. It's true.
Once they download the app, it's got to, I don't know what you can, like, I'm sure it's worth it probably for Net-a-Porter. Yeah. But I don't know. Anyway, that's
it's a fickle industry. It's definitely, you need to raise a lot of money to be able to scale a B2C app, definitely.
This is why I think it's so important for people to see the example that you create something that you like using. You create a consumer app, but the pivot to B2B is natural. I've seen it happen for founders so much. So I think for people who are working on something consumer, it's so frequent that you will just end up realizing that you can't really make money given the marketing cost, given how hard it is to go to market, that essentially you end up using the learnings or using it's still a useful experience in some way, but
definitely
the way you end up succeeding is doing something else.
Yeah, I think it's a big bit of it. And the bit that I learned on the job is don't be super proud over your ideas. Kind of you've got to listen to other people's input. And if you've basically got people shouting like, we want to use this, it's just kind of letting go of that bit of your vision and realizing that market pull shouldn't be ignored. And you're right, it happens a lot, I think, to consumer facing founders.
I read that you said that you were struggling to get noticed for what you were doing because it's a female-focused product.
Oh, man. This is a long conversation.
Well, the thing is, I have actually, I've experienced this, and I've like, this is a thing. This happens. The founder of Stitch Fix talked about it too. That essentially, if you are making a product for people who are not the predominant funders of technology, that it's going to be difficult. So essentially, the most funders of technology are white men. Yeah. So if you're making a product for somebody who is not a white man, it's going to be more difficult. So, for example,
it's tough. Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm being generous, I realize kind of investors have a very limited amount of capital to deploy, and they can only deploy it to a certain number of companies. So I guess they're looking for that investment return, but they're also looking for that kind of chemistry with the founder and with the product. And I found that we could tick the investment return box fine. We could tick the founder chemistry box fine, depending on the person. But that kind of chemistry and that kind of desire to back a product is very hard. And a lot of the conversations that I'd have were like, do women really shop in this way? And I'll have to, the kiss of death was always, I'll take it away and show it to my wife, because you're like, well, you've just kind of removed yourself from that process. So that's when you kind of know you've lost them on that chemistry side. So yeah, it was definitely hard, especially pitching women's wear to men constantly. So what I actually did to get around that is we launched Snap for Men. And I didn't even do the market analysis on menswear. I hate to admit it, but I was like, if I can take an app in to an investor and go, look, I can show this working on you. So I can take a photo of your shirts and have that wow reaction for you, rather than you watching me take a photo of my dress. That was kind of where I began to see that shift. And then you can have a really open conversation around the women's wear market and how this is probably where we're going to focus. But I think no matter what business you're in, it's just making sure that kind of wow factor is relevant to them is really important. And it's easy to get annoyed about it, but I've kind of put it down as one of those things you just have to work your way around.
I also saw that you took a leadership course at London Business School.
I did, yeah.
And I've actually taught the non-technical founders introduction to tech there. Why did you decide to take a course in leadership? What happened?
It's a good question. So Royal Academy of Engineering has a scheme for SME founders who have a technical background, who have suddenly found themselves kind of inventing something from an engineering point and then running a company. And I do find it funny that a load of people who aren't technical, who are amazing at running companies, kind of have this thing in the back of the mind of, but I don't know how the tech works, so I've got to skill up there. I've kind of got the opposite thing of, I know I'm a solid engineer, but I am learning everything about business on the job. So I think you've always got that bit of imposter syndrome. The Royal Academy of Engineering basically has a grant scheme for founders who want to better their business knowledge. And they do internal courses, and then they give you a budget basically to go and seek your own training. So the way that I used it was I got a business coach for a bit, who was absolutely awesome and good at giving me perspective. And then I also took this course from London Business School just to kind of, sounds terrible, but sense check that the way that I was running my company was a good base to scale from. And also to check that I was creating a good place for my team to work and get career progression and kind of formalize things a bit. I'm the least formal boss ever, which I think is a good thing. But I just kind of wanted to quieten down those voices in the back of my head going kind of, are you sure you're doing this right? So I think that kind of theory really helped me as a leader kind of be a bit more confident in the decisions I was making, the calls I was making, and a bit more robust, to be honest, when I needed to kind of stand up for opinions in board meetings, just kind of knowing that this is my gut instinct, but also this is in line with what I should be doing as a leader. So yeah, it's just a kind of self-confidence, personal growth thing, which I do think is really important when you run a company. If you're in a big corporate, they invest in your training, and we kind of forget to do that when we run our own.
And one of the things I really want to learn from you, since you said you were doing this kind of consultative sales.
Yeah.
So you were explaining to people what visual search is.
Exactly.
So, and then after you answer this question, we've got Partish who would love to ask the question. So Partish, I see you. Jenny, so explain to us, visual search. What on earth is it?
Oh, nice. So visual search is a field of computer science which is all around teaching computers to see in the way that humans see. So it's all around kind of looking at an image, whether it's still or whether it's in a video, it doesn't really matter, but it's all around kind of getting the context out of that image. And it's quite a hard thing to kind of grasp as a person because you're born inherently being able to see and being able to interpret the world around you. So to use a really glib, I've got a 3-year-old niece, and it's been fascinating kind of watching her grow up because you kind of see her being able to recognize people, then recognize things, and then vocalize it. So we're all kind of born being able to go like, oh, that's a ball. When you think about computers, they have no contextual awareness whatsoever. So it's just a bunch of pixels, and they can be grouped in different ways. They can be different colors, but ultimately it has no awareness at all. So computer vision is kind of that process that you have to go through to kind of tell a computer that that is a ball, and that is a dress, and that is a shoe, and this is what makes this pair of shoes like this pair of shoes. So it can be machine learning, where it's basically if you tell it it's a ball 1,000 times, a bit like a child, actually, they'll get it eventually. And then you've got an amount of error, or you've got the side of things, which is called mathematical heuristics, which is like mathematical rule sets behind like, this is what makes a pair of shoes a pair of shoes. So the way that computer vision kind of started was very much in that mathematical space, which is actually where I started off, which is trying to interpret the world around you in a mathematical way that you can teach to a computer. Nowadays, it's a bit more machine learning. So being able to come up with data, being able to label that data, be able to manage it, construct it in various different concepts that a computer can understand. And yeah, we use a blend of the two nowadays in-house, of kind of that old school maths with new school machine learning. And that's how we do it.
So is that right, that when you started, because you were doing it the maths way, you didn't need lots and lots of data?
None at all. I had 10 bits of data and my brain, I guess, if we can use that. But but it's really interesting watching the industry sway from kind of the mathematical rule sets to machine learning. It's all about the barriers to entry around GPUs and the cost of, graphical processing units, and kind of the cost of being able to train, because to train on normal computers, it just took so long. Like if you have to run a model with thousands of iterations, you could be waiting for weeks for a model to complete. Nowadays, you can fire up a GPU in the cloud and it can run overnight, and then you can look at your results in the morning. And that's been the big switch that we've seen in the industry. Where I'm quite passionate about is making sure that we're not just blindly doing machine learning. So making sure, like, is that the best approach that we can take? Or is there actually a way more obvious route that doesn't involve machine learning that we're just kind of overlooking because it's not new and shiny? Or how much data do we need? And if we are doing machine learning, how can we make sure we're not baking in a load of bias? So to give you an example, in the fashion industry, some of our competitors, won't name names, but they kind of say, we're training this algorithm just for you. And that feels special, right, as a customer, because it's like, they're doing this for us, it must be awesome and it's going to work well. And if you do that, you get amazingly accurate results because you've trained just on that. The problem is you're baking a load of bias into a system. So if you change your model, or use a model with a different skin tone, or you change your photography style or the way they're standing or anything like that, that model will just fall over straight away because you've trained it to, it's only ever seen that little segment of the world. It's a bit like if an alien dropped on the country and they'd read one book, they'd be expecting to see that, but they'd have the whole world around them. So that's something, just machine learning in general, you need to be really, really careful about, is looking at bias and looking at the impact that has on results. And I used fashion as an example because it's the one that I know. But when you look at kind of skin tones and race in AI. That's a terrifying area to look into. Same with gender equality as well. Just there was a study that was done where we trained a natural language processing kind of unit on historical documents. So it was loads of works of fiction, and I'll try and find the study so that you can reference it. But it's basically a load of fiction. And what came out of the computer science kind of model, the AI at the end of it, was women were pretty and meek and all of these kind of romantic words that were used in the 18th century. Men were powerful and they were... So it's just kind of one of those things where if you're not careful with the data that you're training it on, you can't expect the computer to correct it and know it's wrong. Or if it's right, it's just regurgitating stuff at the end of it. So it's an interesting area.
Yeah, it's an interesting, scary area. Okay, so that was super interesting. Partish, hello. We can now hear you. So unmute.
Yeah, thank you.
Please. Hello. So, Partish, tell us who you are. Obviously, I know who you are, but not everybody else does. Jenny certainly doesn't. So introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Thank you, Sophia. So I'm currently a student in Sophia's Tech for Non-Techies course.
Awesome.
That's how I'm here for today's seminar. But my background is I have a Booth MBA like Sophia, and I am looking to acquire a tech company. I took a course called Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition at Booth, and I have a non-technical background, primarily in banking, in finance, in the city of London. I worked in India, New Delhi, and London, and I was looking for some kind of knowledge on tech for non-techies, and I found Sophia, and I'm very grateful for that course that she's teaching. Yeah, so that's the reason I'm here. So I have two questions, both very short and both follow from the way I just introduced myself. First question is, what is that one thing that you will ask people with non-technical background to be aware of or to look for, or however you want to phrase it, when they're looking to buy a tech company? What's that one thing that you want them to be aware of? And if there are two or three, that's fine, but I'm just asking for that one thing. And the second question is, I'm assuming you've done a lot of fundraising, etc. So what is that one advice you can give to people who are raising funds to acquire a tech company?
Awesome. Okay, great questions.
My God, you see, smart people in this community. Thank you so much, Partish.
Yeah, thanks, Partish. Yeah, brilliant questions. So I'd say the one thing to be aware of is, I know it sounds terrible, it's making sure you're buying something that's real. And this is whether you're partnering with someone or whether you're acquiring. I think it's really important that basically the tech isn't being faked. So I'd say ask for a live demo. Don't be afraid to ask tough questions. Don't be afraid to ask to see it working on your data if it's an AI product. So really kind of kicking the tires on what the demonstration looks like, and kind of, you'll be great at this with your background, but kind of reading that body language, seeing where they start to get nervous, and asking questions as well around, right, what's the amount of work that you need to do to get it from this point to this point? So it can kind of help inform, right, what's the level of capital that I need to invest in it to get it to the stage where I think I can take it to market, and all those kind of good things. So really, really focus on the live demo. I'd say as well, it depends if you're buying a company or whether you're buying a product that you want to build a company around. But if you're looking at the company, really, really look closely at the team as well. So who's the founder? Would they want to come with it? Looking at the tech team behind it. Qualifications are obviously one easy indicator, but also don't be afraid to ask the questions around kind of who built what. Because I think when I look at potential hires for the company, it's great to see their qualifications. It's great to see their preferred languages and that kind of thing. But being able to say, like, right, what was the thing that you built alone in your last company? Or what's the thing that you were most proud of? All those kind of really stereotypical interview questions. But I guess they'll give you a flavor of, are you buying cracking technology and a cracking team? Or is this just a bit of tech that you'll want to kind of build up around? And if it is, trying to get a sense of where those gaps are now before you're in too deep.
Okay, so the second question from Partish was about fundraising. And I know, Jenny, that you raised a fund. You raised money during the pandemic. So
I did. So I guess the key thing to keep in mind is it depends on the stage you're at in your company. So it'll be very different from seed to Series A to Series B and all of that. But at each of those stages, I think there's a barrier to entry that you should always meet, which is a KPI that's normally set by an investor. So for instance, they'll say we'll only fund companies who have a minimum of this annual run rate or ARR, or we only invest in these kind of technologies. So I'd say the first thing to do when you're raising funding is to really kind of aggressively pre-filter who you could raise money from. So you don't want to waste your time speaking to investors who, they've got a load of cash, but you know that you don't meet their criteria. So for me, it's finding people who like deep tech, who like AI. So obviously don't go to the kind of direct to consumer investors, and also people who you're matching your KPIs with at the moment, whether that is recurring revenue, whether it's number of people on a team, whether it's kind of insert criteria here. So when you're doing a seed round, it's obviously a little bit harder. A lot of it comes down to personal chemistry. So one thing that I did when I was raising my seed that was probably the one thing I recommend to you is to try and get references on the investor from companies who they've already invested in, because you are going to be working with them for 5, 8, 10, 15, 20 years if it all goes well. So you want to know that you get on with them well, and you want to know how they react in a crisis, because you will have some somewhere along the way. So I'd say don't be afraid to ask for personal references. And when it comes to impressing them, I'd say you know your strengths the best. You know your weaknesses. Make sure that you present your weaknesses in a way that you can fill them. So if they say, well, for me, it was, well, you don't have a business background. It's like, yeah, I've got this amazing COO. This is his background. So be able to kind of fend off those frequently asked questions well, and then really kind of sell them on your personal strengths. So for me, that was the kind of technical side, whereas you can flip it on its head and you've got all of that experience in finance. You've run businesses before, you know how to grow and scale teams. You found an amazing tech company that you've decided to acquire. This is their background, and this is why it's a good package for you to invest in. That's probably the main thing to do, is just really, really focus on those strengths and make them ironclad when it comes to an argument.
I wanted to point out what you said, Jenny, about the fact that you were being asked about your business skills because you're a technical founder.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting because, we here, this audience, we're non-techies. And, by definition, we get asked about, well, you're non-technical, so what are you doing here? And I think that, there are so many investors who literally say, I won't invest in non-technical founders. So there's this kind of like belief on the non-technical side that, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And, it's the other side has all the good stuff. The grass is greener. Everything happens to them. All the good stuff happens to them, and none of the good stuff happens to us. Yeah. And it's just interesting to have a technical founder who literally gets asked like, okay, well, you can code. Well done. But
what else can you do?
Money.
Just to kind of make you guys feel a bit better, it's, I think the grass is always greener. It's just, and you're always, an investor's job is to kind of try and pick holes in it a bit and see how you react and kind of see if it is a real risk or whether it's something that can be addressed. So we probably get asked about it equal amounts. But I guess from my point of view, like, it's important for me to know that I'm growing as a leader and that I'm growing on the business side of things. So that course I did and kind of sense checking myself a lot is very important. And it's probably the same as you, like you've all signed up for this. It's a really, really good thing to try and kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in technology. You don't need to be a coder to be able to know about tech. I think that's the biggest kind of, the biggest lie that's told in a way in tech is that you need to be a coder. You need to do one of these courses to teach yourself how to code in X number of weeks. And it's like, it's amazing if you can do that. I'm a little bit skeptical about the ones that teach how to code in 3 weeks or whatever, because, I spent 4 years doing it and I still wouldn't call myself a software engineer. But I think being able to understand the user experience behind tech, being able to articulate technology, and being able to get other people excited about it, they're the technical skills that you really, really need to run a good company. You obviously need to know how to manage a tech team as well. But once again, if you've got a solid CTO or if you've got a solid lead developer, then actually your job is to set the vision. It's to tell people how tech's used. It's not your job to get stuck into the detail every day. And to be honest, that's my biggest struggle personally, is I love the detail and I love the tech, and I have to kind of hold myself back from getting stuck in. And it's very easy to be pigeonholed by investors as well. So I get asked a lot, kind of, why are you running the company? You're a software engineer, like get in a CEO, get in a professional, and then you can do the tech. And I think you've always got that kind of dynamic of people looking for the thing that you're not, whereas you should just own it and go with it.
I felt so inspired and uplifted by that. I'm sure you did too. Just this idea of just be the visionary and don't get caught up in what you're not. These are very wise words indeed, and it's just nice to be reminded. And many non-technical founders doubt themselves so unnecessarily and make avoidable mistakes, like shelling out on expensive long coding courses that they never complete. And as Jenny was just saying, they might not necessarily be that useful anyway. I want you to avoid those mistakes. So that's why next week I'm holding a free session called The 4 Biggest Mistakes Non-Technical Founders Make and How to Avoid Them. You can register to that if you go to techfornontechies.co/free class, and the link is also in the show notes, or just go to techfornontechies.co/events and you will see this free class. So join and avoid some costly mistakes and avoid stress. And if this episode floats your boat and you want more, then come and join us as a member. If you join us as a member, you'll be able to ask our speakers like Jenny your questions and also learn from your fellow members like Pratish, and that is pretty awesome. Our membership is literally your best friend in tech. Every week we have live sessions and masterclasses. You also have member meetups, Q&A with me, and learning notes on key aspects of technology like AI, product management, the app economy, and so much more. So what is not to like? Nothing, I tell you. So check out techfornontechies.co/membership. And that's it for now, my dear smart people. Have a wonderful week, and I'll speak to you soon.